Okay, so with that, we're going to start the plenary morning session, and I'm honored to have Jim Southwick present today on the Minnesota MedTech 3.0 strategy. The Minnesota MedTech 3.0 coalition was initiated by the Medtronic CEO along with the CEOs and leadership of the Mayo Clinic, Health Partners, University of Minnesota, and other academic and healthcare partners in Minnesota, as well as Medical Alley, representatives from the venture finance industry, and with involvement from Governor Walz's office. The goal of the coalition is to further strengthen the medical technology ecosystem in Minnesota, including the convergence of AI, machine learning with medical technology. The vision is that Minnesota can capture tremendous growth in research, manufacturing, and high-wage jobs through a more strategic focus on this sector. So Jim will present on that, and a bit about Jim. He is currently the managing director for MedTech 3.0, which is part of Greater MSP. He started there just recently in February 2025, so he's running very quickly in the last few months, to say the least. He retired from Medtronic in 2023, where he served the last 7 of his 21 years as head of worldwide government affairs. Before this role, he led Medtronic's international legal function, shaping a team of professionals on all continents and earning Medtronic's Wallen Award for leadership. His earlier Medtronic roles included Vice President of International Regulatory Strategy and Legal Counsel to the Neurological Business Unit. Before Medtronic, he worked in the Office of the United States Trade Representative, part of the Executive Office of the President in Washington, D.C. His roles included leading U.S.-Japan trade negotiations as Deputy Assistant United States Trade Representative for Japan, and before that, as Legal Counsel for U.S.-Japan trade negotiations and was the lead NAFTA lawyer for the U.S. Jim's work on Japan trade issues brought him a connection with former Vice President and Ambassador to Japan, Walter Mondale, which I did not know, very interesting. And after leaving USTR, Jim worked several years with Mr. Mondale at his Minneapolis law firm on East Asia trade and business matters before joining Medtronic. He has a degree from University of Minnesota, a master's in Latin American studies from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and a BA in international relations from Carleton College. So with that, Jim, we bring you to the stage and looking forward to your talk. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Hubert. And good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here. I've only gotten to know Hubert in the last couple of months as I came into this role, and I have to say what a tremendous asset for the state of Minnesota and the University of Minnesota and the medical technology industry. Hubert is everywhere and does everything and is superhuman, so it's a great pleasure to get to know him. As Hubert mentioned, I came in the role of managing director for this project. Greater MSP is a local economic development organization, a partnership that works with entities, especially in complex economic development projects like this. So, and then after I retired from Medtronic, it had been my desire to find something civic and to engage in the community. And this is perfect because this strikes a real personal passion for me about global competitiveness, about innovation, about great jobs and manufacturing in the state that I grew up in and the state that I love. So I think we know in Minnesota we claim dawn of the medtech industry. If you can't be at Medtronic without knowing what these 3 pictures are. On the right is Mr. Bakken. There are not very many pictures. In the late 1940s, I guess they didn't have as much digital photography. But that's Earl in his garage inventing the pacemaker. For the gentleman on the left, who's Dr. Walt Lillehei of the University of Minnesota, who was a pioneering cardiac surgeon in the 1940s and 50s. There's a famous story of Earl beginning to make devices for Dr. Lillehei. The first pacemakers are a big thing that sat on a hospital cart and plugged into the wall. And in 1957, in the summer, there was a big electrical storm, as we have from time to time on the Great Plains, and it took out the power at the hospital. And Dr. Lillehei had some of his first pediatric heart surgery patients that were plugged into the wall on Earl's pacemaker, and he lost some patients. and said to Earl, make me one with a battery. And so then we had the dawn of the pacemaker. But we know that this is a meaningful story, not only because it's fun, because it's the history of the industry, but because it just illustrates what's still true today, that the core of this industry is that collaboration of the engineer and the clinician bringing forth the new ideas. But of course, there's an entire ecosystem that surrounds that. And I think everyone in the room knows, but it's worth sort of focusing on it for a minute, how many sort of tentacles and pieces there are connecting this system and making it something that's strong. And the role of the big companies, which occasionally provide exits for investors, and little companies, but spread talent. If you go around and ask almost anyone who's working in the small company where they started, they'll tell you Boston Scientific or Medtronic or one of the others. And so that talent pool is crucial. The interaction with the universities and the academic medical centers is as fundamental as it ever was, and nothing happens without that. The Minnesota's fantastic healthcare systems are crucial partners, as we know. I mean, you have to interact with the clinicians for what the patients need. You got to test ideas. You have to. A lot of times, the idea will start with the clinician and come to the engineer. They have to define the needs, get the data, work on the clinical trials. And the health insurers, everyone knows, they stand at the gate. If they don't open the gate for you, you're not going to go very far. But of course, the data that they bring is crucial to the system as well, and the insights about economic needs in the market. And where would we be without the funders to get things started? And of course, all the tremendous insights, network connections. And I think everyone knows that in MedTech, you need a funder class that understands the industry, because that's a long time horizon. And the many, how you risk and evaluate that pathway and make a good business around it is a very special set of skills. The supply chain that surrounds this and brings the technology and efficiency and scale. And finally, of course, the government partners. There are gatekeepers, but also, as Hubert was referring to, grant funders and others as well. So this is the whole system. And the whole system needs to work together for us to have strong innovation and a strong industry. And in Minnesota, we know this is a signature industry for our economy. So 35,000 jobs in Minnesota today. And one thing I learned just recently is 50.5% of those jobs, so more than half of those 35,000 jobs, require only a high school degree. So we know we have researchers and innovators and senior business people and funders, but more than half of those jobs are also down into the manufacturing floor, in the lab techs and other jobs. So it's a very strong job producer across the spectrum for Minnesota, and we enjoy talking to our political leaders about what this means for the economy and workforce as a whole. It's high-wage jobs, as we know, and a big impact. And of course, it helps create the overall dynamism with our much larger healthcare system employers in the state. So pretty good, but is pretty good enough? Minnesota, old-time Minnesotans know Garrison Keillor. We're all above average. But I think this project is born of the thinking that that ecosystem maybe isn't as robust as it needs to be to face the current environment. And we don't want to rest on our laurels. We don't want to assume that everything we've been doing is good enough, because others are trying harder in some ways. There are many hubs emerging in MedTech, and the technology is more complex. And there's this great convergence of AI with MedTech. 30% of MedTech innovations now have an AI aspect, I learned the other day. And do we have the talent, and do we have the resources and access to data to actually catch the wave on that level of innovation? So the strategy, the Minnesota MedTech 3.0 strategy, thinks how are we going to reinvigorate the ecosystem, and that's a little bit of an abstract mandate, reinvigorate an ecosystem. So it has to be kind of broken down into gap analysis of what are the main issues, and the overall theme is, look, we need stronger connections, faster and better information flow and coordination across the system. We need to really focus on the talent and the capital and the data that's needed. And just think more as a system, engage our state leaders and our federal government more as a system, and promote and build ourselves more as a system. In my career, I spent a lot of time focused on U.S. competitiveness and foreign markets. It was my job in Washington and at Medtronic. I spent a lot of time looking at our opportunities and barriers overseas, and traveled to China many times. And they have a strong industrial policy strategy. MedTech industry is on their list of top industries that they expect to be, global leaders in. And when they set those expectations, they're very good at aligning resources and energy around it. And they're trying hard in MedTech. So we have to know that we're in a race, and run like we mean it in the race. But it's not only protecting against the downside. The upside is fantastic too. What this already means for the Minnesota economy, but also what it can mean, because we know that there is no limit to new technology and solutions needed in healthcare. The challenges are huge, and they're in front of us, and technology is really the only way that we're going to be able to address the escalating needs in the healthcare system. And so there will be continuous opportunity, and we want to be riding the wave of that opportunity. So the strategy sets the broad goal of asserting and maintaining our leadership in MedTech. To make it work, it is pulling together all the critical stakeholders in the ecosystem, like we discussed before. And there's excellent engagement at senior leadership levels. CEO of Mayo Clinic, CEO of Health Partners, top leadership at the other health systems, the president of the University of Minnesota, the governor, and many others, the Medical Alley being a crucial partner in this. Yesterday, we had a meeting at the Capitol with the governor, with several of those leaders present. The governor stayed with us for an hour in the middle of the busiest time of the legislative calendar, because he sees the value of working together in this way. And he sees the state as a partner. This isn't we're lobbying for certain things right now. It's more we're collectively with the state forming a partnership. And obviously for the shared goals that we all know are important around revenue, jobs, business expansion, talent, and innovation for the healthcare system. Greater MSP has experience that I'm learning from in running these types of multi-stakeholder economic development projects in Minnesota. And a couple of examples. Greater MSP is coordinating the Minnesota Sustainable Aviation Fuels effort, which is bringing together Delta Airlines, the Airport Commission, and our agribusiness sector. Same, MBOLD is kind of next generation in agriculture and proteins with Cargill and our agribusiness sector as well. And a lot of learning from what's happening in other states and other countries around the world. And we are not best in class in terms of the types of organization, incentives, programs to drive the industry. So we're going to be learning from those things to drive the project. The strategy is aiming to look, as I said, at the ecosystem, but we have to break it down into some project areas. We had competed for a large federal grant last year under the CHIPS Act, and that grant did not come through, which may or may not be a blessing in disguise at this point. But there were several project areas that were built around a strategy of having a significant federal funding grant to fuel. But when that grant didn't come through, the coalition rededicated and reorganized to figure out, well, it's just us here ourselves, and let's see what we can do to start working on this. And so about 4 crucial project areas to start with still with an overarching goal to move the whole system, but to take the pieces. So you see the 4 project areas I'll speak a little bit more about. In the last couple of months since I've been here, how are they up and running? So the North Star Data Alliance is one of the focuses, and again, this relates to what we talked about, how the convergence of AI and big data and MedTech, and the access to the data for developing those solutions we see as a critical infrastructure point for the innovation ecosystem. The time spent, the difficulty spent in getting access to the data to test your ideas and then develop your algorithms and products is a rate limiting factor in the innovation pathway, and a cost and a burden. So if we can create more efficient, but still obviously safe, secure, appropriate, well-regulated pathways with frameworks, we will contribute to the innovation infrastructure. So this effort is bringing together 3 organizations in the state. The Mayo Clinical Platform is a very robust multinational data set that Mayo's built, and they have a well-built front door for getting access to their data. The University of Minnesota Center for Learning and Health System Science, I don't really like their acronym. I got to tell Genevieve, it just doesn't roll off the tongue, but it is descriptive. Anyway, they have actually a tremendous data platform that they have built. It also cuts across different systems and has very interesting data in it. And the Minnesota EHR Coalition is all the major health systems in Minnesota. They built this during COVID on a standard data model. To be able to do public health management, but there's real potential in that system as well for research. So we're working to kind of strengthen the collaboration and access and system for this. We have another project focusing on the startup sector called Mincubator. And again, in our grant proposal, this had dollars associated with it. Now what it has is the goodwill and senior expertise and energy of all the stakeholders in the coalition. So referrals come in, and Hubert's actually been a crucial partner and a thought partner in helping to drive this. We are building our first cohort this month of 8 to 12 emerging companies to take through a 12 to 14 week incubation. And unlike other incubators, so we do not take equity, we don't give money. What we have is in-kind service to solve problems in a focused way for startups. And we're going to learn from doing a few of these cohorts and try to build and figure out how to make this a more scalable and sustainable platform. Talent is a crucial issue, and the coalition is making progress on what they call the Minnesota model, for a new Minnesota model for building talent in critical areas, that starts with the idea that we're going to aggregate need, bring certain sectors together instead of individual companies with their specific plans and programs talking separately to universities in the state or other funders, to identify collectively job categories, aggregate up the need, and then work jointly with academic institutions, with foundations and others to build a strategy. And they've started work first with the healthcare providers in the coalition. They've identified 3 job categories that are the highest priority for those providers. They have agreed on those priorities, and they have aggregated the data for upcoming demand, and they're starting this more complex process of interacting with all the various the systems to roll out a strategy, including, this is another place where the governor is very active. The Governor's Workforce Development Board is helping to oversee and connect state resources to drive the strategy. So we'll learn from this first set of job categories and then apply this model, build muscle for other areas like in AI technology and microelectronics manufacturing, other job categories that are going to be crucial for the industry. And there's buzz around this starting to build. I don't have a good before-after reference personally, but we're seeing a lot of kind of investor interest, taking notice that we're acting like we have a strategy and we're acting seriously in attracting. And even if they're not going to be brought in, they're not going to be our 8, 12 companies in the incubator, or the AI data isn't their most important thing. The overall sense that the whole system is working together and we're coordinated and the governor's engaged and we're willing to do things to help is creating some momentum. And of course in the picture, I think hopefully you all saw, very wonderful a new investment by Philips in Minnesota, but there are others. Solventum when it spun out of 3M, made a decision to stay in Minnesota, and Boston Scientific has done some tremendous expansion in Minnesota. So they're at the big company level, there's things happening, but we're meeting more delegations as well from different jurisdictions that are taking a look. And part of this also, as I said, we're trying to work specific project areas, but keep the big picture moving as well. And at the big picture, it's really working on the partnership with the state. And we've been going around the legislature the last couple of months and saying there's a couple things for this session, but it's late in the session. This is a difficult year for budget, so we're not asking for sun, moon, and stars. But what we would like is to bring together a bipartisan working group of legislators with our coalition in the summer after session and do a full soup to nuts analysis of what makes a competitive ecosystem, a competitive economic development strategy for the state around MedTech, including the specific policy issues, including the actions that are not policy issues, but together with the legislature. And we've had very positive response actually to that proposal, and getting ready to figure out the cohort of legislatures to start doing that, as we said, in the summer after the session. So that is the thrust of the effort. It's really fun to be, having this opportunity to come together with all these fantastic stakeholders, all these thoughtful leaders, brilliant scientists, savvy business people, and see what we can do to ensure Minnesota is not just above average, but way above average. So thank you. And I think, Hubert, we have a little time for questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Yeah, thank you, Jim. That was a great overview of the MedTech 3.0. And you could see why we're in good hands now. Jim has a broad view and also experience to guide us. Maybe I'll just ask a question to start us off. A lot of what Jim has talked about is going to set the stage for our panel discussion next. And so we're going to get into some of those more detailed questions. But since you had so much experience, traveling abroad in your previous role, what has been the perception of Minnesota's MedTech ecosystem from the outside? And then as you have traveled elsewhere and interacted with folks, looking at what they've been developing and emerging, what can you say about kind of, what has been their initial efforts to get going with the MedTech ecosystem? I know that's a lot, but maybe you could just share.
So a few comparative thoughts.
Yeah.
I would say that internationally, sometimes the Minnesota ecosystem isn't as well known as it should be. We have a little bit of light under bushel instead of light on stand kind of problem. And so speaking louder and promoting more, I think it needs to be part of this. I think those who are, the governments or companies that are deeper in the MedTech sector know about me. So they certainly know about Mayo Clinic. And they say, get Medtronics there too.
Yeah.
But to really know what we have in terms of an ecosystem, it could be better known. I used to say I used to travel sometimes with the Medtronic CEO to different countries, and I had a saying among our government relations team is that everywhere Jeff Martha lands, the government's going to ask for a factory, and they're going to show you what they're doing to build in the energy and the incentives they have for driving their medtech industry. Because a lot of governments understand this is a great industry. Those numbers on jobs and innovation, what it does for the economy. This is one of those they want, so I think that kind of background, and that's true of other states, not just other foreign governments. And I think, frankly, that kind of background is what led Jeff to want to do this in the first place. He said, "Come on, we're in Minnesota. We should get up off the mat a little bit here and work on this a little bit harder." So I think there's a certain amount of that. I don't want to understate this, but thinking about the ecosystem in some of the other places, I think there's 3 countries that are kind of, 3 or 4, but I would mention Israel, Ireland, and China as places, again, where they really are working hard on this, and the government is a very strong partner, and they're organized, and they have a strategy. And when you're Medtronic and you land in one of those countries, it's fascinating how they will approach you and pitch. And of course, China stands in its own category in terms of the awesome power and size of the economy, the amount of research and manufacturing energy. Medtronic acquired a medtech company in China, and I visited their factory a couple years ago, and it was this giant room. I have never seen so many robots in one in one place. So that sense of, again, I think we're pretty good, but I think we're in a race, and we have to act like we are.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that insight. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Question there, please.
Yeah, quick question. Initially, I was going to request a factory. That just feels awkward now.
And I'm retired, so I got no skin in it either.
Thank you for everything you're doing in this chapter, Jim. This is wonderful. As on behalf of the behemoth countries or companies, comparing to China, where authoritarianism can drive coordination and cooperation. Americans pride themselves on competition and individualism or rivalry between the companies. What message do you have to people in the companies to think about partnership and behave in ways that foster what this vision promises for us?
Right. Well, I have definitely a thought on that, which we are not trying to replicate China's model. We have an American model of innovation that has been a core source of strength. And is intact and is crucial, and hopefully will remain intact, and that we can do this the American way. We can build access to data with privacy and security and protection. We have the skills to do that. In China, maybe their access to data at scale and speed for their AI development is a serious competitive issue, but we can do it our way. Is my view, and I think we can be competitive at the same time that we can look at the overarching structures in the ecosystem and build it. So yeah, I think we can do it.
Thanks very much. Since you had a meeting with the governor, and you probably have a much better idea of the pulse in Minnesota and looking forward to the next budget cycle, do you anticipate an increase at all in tax credits and other incentives for startup companies and investing in medtech? Can you give us a flavor of your guests there, if you have a crystal ball with you?
Yeah, I think my sense is, and I'm certainly not a deep expert in what's going on exactly in the state budget negotiations. I think we all know the headlines. It's a tough year, right? So I don't think big things this year, but I think that there are a lot of discussions. Our coalition has said that we support a couple of things the governor has already proposed, and one of them is to restructure the R&D tax credit. And the governor did mention that yesterday. He said he's heard us, he understands. They're trying to work on that in this closing area. And we've also said that there's a little fund that DEED has, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, that is called the Forward Fund, which is it's already appropriated money from 2023, but it wasn't spent because it has very tight criteria. It has to be matching federal grants and so on. That never happened. So they're just trying to loosen that criteria so that can be there as kind of an economic development closing fund as well. And so that would be one more helpful step. But I think that I know that there are a lot of other bigger sets of issues people are concerned about. The angel tax credit, people are concerned about sort of what kind of state investments and funds and support for startups there could be. And some are concerned about non-compete rules and things like that. So that's why we thought, like, coming in February when the session closes in May and it's a bad budget year, we can't front-end load on all those things. But that's why we want to have this after session pull together this bipartisan group and, step in and not only complain, but not only complain, talk about what's the vision, what do other states do? What tools do they have? And what's that really look like? And bring good data and analysis so we can kind of have a sober, not a heat in the moment discussion and try to, work more towards the strategy.
A question over there.
It was very exciting picture you just presented about the Minnesota MedTech landscape. I just use my as an example. I'm a couple team. My partner is a clinician. I'm a basic researcher. I got educated here and then worked in Switzerland and Singapore. We're very famous for innovation and biotechnology, MedTech. So the reason we come back here not only because of Minnesota nice, but also these the Med Hub reputation, U of M and Mayo Clinic, these very highly reputed medical institutions. One thing I found that since we are at the U of M, that one very strong drive for the university is a Blue Ridge ranking, which is about the NIH grant and publication. That seems like, I know you can do both, but it's very hard to be translational, working on patent, on spin-off and startup, and then you publish extensively. That's both is 120% efforts. I know this is probably a federal level. I don't know if it's state level, but how would solve the problem that, not problem, but how to coexist in the university setting, excel in academic, or if there's a dual track that you could do, you are good in translational, and there's such a good, yesterday I just learned it's the #1 interdiscipline science in the University of Minnesota in the whole country. So how do we profit from all this great reputation and resource and really push it to the next level?
Yeah. Well, that's a huge question that I don't know that I'm competent to really understand all aspects of the requirements, incentives, translational research versus other kinds of academic research. But I do know that that there is serious effort at the university, and they're very, very engaged in the strategy. I look at Hubert Center, as a sort of epitome of academic and translational aspects, although I still don't even know all that much about Hubert Center. But and there are others as well, as we're working with the Center for Learning Health Systems
I can't say it either.
Science.
I just say CL. I can't even say the acronym.
CHLSS. Genevieve, we're going to call it Genevieve Center.
Yeah.
It's the data that they've built. They're also very interested in how can that be translated more into commercial research opportunities. And I know last night I had the privilege of sitting next to the university's vice president of research at dinner, and the university has just signed, for example, a big collaboration agreement with Medtronic to try to bridge. So I see I'm early and I don't understand a lot about the university, but I do see that there are intentions and efforts, and I think your challenge is important to understand what are the incentives at the university, and are we taking those into account as we try to strengthen these things and smart. But that's probably not a very satisfactory answer to the bigger challenge that you raised, but I do want to acknowledge that I hear the point, and the translational aspect is important.
And I will say in the panel discussion, we actually have one question surrounding that topic. So we'll put the pressure also on some of the panelists.
Okay.
So not just you. I think we'll end the session on this. Oh, one more question. We'll do one more question. Good question here.
Thank Thank you so much for the amazing work. You mentioned China as growing, but I also feel like in America, Massachusetts is kind of the leading MedTech hub, and Minnesota comes second, almost competing. But and as Dr. Arvind said, incentives and what could we do in Minnesota, or could we follow what Massachusetts is doing for bringing the whole tech and medical companies and hospitals together? Will we be learning from them also?
There's definitely learning from states like Massachusetts, and of course California is very, very strong. In terms of actual medtech job growth, Phoenix has been #1 in a recent probably decade, and there's amazing medtech job growth. You know, the Research Triangle, North Carolina. Yeah, we have to look at all these places and understand what they're. Florida, Wisconsin, what are they doing? Wisconsin won a federal grant when we didn't, but I just admitted
Let's not
that
talk about that.
say,
It still hurts. It still hurts.
Yeah, it does.
It's too early still.
So yes, we have to get going on really learning from these other states. And again, we got our projects to get started, but we have to be driving that big picture with the vision and keep the governor engaged in these things. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate the broad overview you gave, and it was a wonderful talk, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.